Hey everybody, Dr. Colleen Sierra here. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and the founder and executive director of Sierra Center for Behavioral Health. Happy Thursday. It's almost the end of the week, as though there's a differentiation at this point. So the last time we talked on Monday, I came on to talk about the importance of creating structure, schedule, routine when there is chaos, and that's really important. I want to piggyback on that though, because there's something else at play here that really needs to be named. I had this interesting experience where I, for myself, was trying to figure out a way to create more structure and a routine, especially after sharing that video with you guys. I was like, I really need to do this for myself. I'm struggling with it too. So I went into my calendar and I noticed that there was some resistance in doing this. But I went into my calendar and I started to delete the schedule and the routine that I had prior. And I wound up crying as I was deleting certain things. On Mondays, I do that Zumba class that I talked about. I cried when I deleted it from my calendar. Now that sounds crazy because it's just a Zumba class. But when I started to think about what was really going on, it's grief. And I think that's important to talk about. So many of us think that grief is just reserved for the death of a loved one or divorce. If our house gets burned down, some catastrophic, life-threatening thing. And those things are grief and loss, obviously. But what we are currently going through with COVID and the loss of so many things that we were looking forward to, the loss of being able to interact with friends and family in person, all of these things are lost too, and they come with feelings of grief. It's important to talk about that because we can't move through the stages of grief if we don't know that's what's going on. So I wanted to come on and talk about what the stages are and invite you to think about where you are in those stages. So the first stage is denial. That's when it's hard to believe that whatever is happening. And we just want to say, this can't be true. It can't be as bad as they say it is. They're lying about the numbers in China. They're lying about New York. The media is really blowing this out of proportion. These are things that we're hearing people say, and it makes good sense that they're saying it because they're in denial, which is the first stage of grief. So that's important to know. The second stage is anger. So that might be something like, if this shelter in order sticks around, I'm not listening. I can't take this. I'm going out anyway. Anger and frustration, which again makes sense. This is a frustrating situation. People are allowed to feel angry about it, but it is important to recognize that this is part of grief. So anger is the second stage. Bargaining is the third. So I find myself sometimes in bargaining. That can sound something like, well, it's probably okay to go for a walk as long as I'm 6 feet away. Now, it depends on who you're listening to, whether that's actually okay or not. Some people are going to say that's fine. Other folks are going to say really intense social distancing is really not leaving your house, not interacting with anyone outside of your family. But that's part of what bargaining can sound like. Or I'm still going to go to the grocery store, but I'm going to wear a mask. You're trying to grapple with the reality in a way that's a bit more palatable for you. So that's bargaining. And that's the third stage. Depression is the fourth stage. So if you find yourself really sad about this a lot, I was there yesterday. To be clear though, Depression gets thrown out a lot as a way to describe sadness. But depression and sadness are really two different things. So really what we're talking about with grief is typically sadness. The only way that it is depression, clinical diagnosable depression, is if you're feeling sad, not just sad, profoundly sad most of the day, more days than not, for 2 weeks or more. That is clinical depression. Anything other than that is sadness. So what we're really talking about right here is sadness. And so yesterday, for me, it was hard to get out of bed. I felt sad. I felt unmotivated. The things that I typically look forward to and kind of get me going, and all the work I have to do and fun things with the kids, none of those things felt fun or exciting. I was in the depression and fourth phase of grief yesterday. And then there's acceptance, which is where I'm at now more. And that's when you acknowledge the reality for what it is. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel sad or frustrated ever and that you're just all like zen about it. But it means that you do accept the reality for what it is. You're no longer trying to like find workarounds. You're no longer convinced that the media is actually turning this into something it's not, or that it's a hoax. You know, you're not doing any of those things anymore. You recognize the facts of the situation, and you're learning to figure out what your new normal is. That's acceptance. That's where we all want to be. So here's what's important. In order to get to this acceptance place, we need to move through the other stages. We can't get to acceptance without feeling some anger, or without feeling some denial, without trying to be like, but no, really, like, as long as I'm just seeing my next door neighbors, it's okay, right? We have to move through all of these other phases to get to acceptance. And the only way to move through all the phases is to accept that this is grief. And that grief does not have to just be reserved for death. Grief and loss can be experienced right now. It is part of the picture, and it's okay. It's okay to experience grief and loss around seemingly dumb things like my Zumba class. It's okay to feel a loss at needing to cancel a concert that you were really excited about, or a play, or just not being able to go out to dinner or see your friends. These things in a normal world would not be the end of the world, and they still aren't now, but they are meaningful, and we're allowed to have feelings about it. And the sooner we let ourselves have feelings about it and just feel all those feelings and actually feel our feelings and not avoid our feelings by running into the kitchen to eat every time we're upset, by pouring a glass of wine every time we're upset, by buying some piece of clothing every time we're upset. As soon as we actually start to feel our feelings, we will move through the stages of grief, and we will wind up at acceptance, which is a much better place to be. So something to think about. I hope you guys are hanging in there. Let us know how you're doing and how we can help. Thanks.